Welcome to Got Grass, conversations with the legends and leaders of Bluegrass. You've enjoyed live Bluegrass at Guitar Town CT concerts in Hampton, Connecticut since 2008. From Tony Rice, Rouse Stanley, and Doyle Lawson to Tim O'Brien, Sierra Hall, and Billy Strings. Now you can go behind the scenes as we chat with your favorite Bluegrass stars. I'm your podcast host, Chris Worth. I'm very happy to welcome Mason Via to Got Grass today. Welcome.
How's it going?
Good. You have an interesting name. My wife and I travel to Italy a lot, and in Italy it's pronounced via, and it means street. Like Via Michelangelo would be Michelangelo Street, but Via means kind of on the way to. So maybe that's an appropriate name for you because
I think
you're on the way to something.
I think it's the same meaning. Yeah. Man, it's one of those names where my dad, he used to tell me that basically we used to be troll people.
Oh,
that was what I heard when I was growing up. We were troll people back in the day. The joke there, or is it would continue and basically say, via, it means through the way of, and the Vi family crest is actually hanging in some castle somewhere over there, and it's right at the crossroads of a bunch of different bridges. And he would say the Vi's used to be troll people and you got to pay the troll toll or whatever to get over the bridge.
That's a good story.
Yeah. So, but I like what you're saying a lot more, that I'm on the way to something, or I could bring people with me on a journey through my music.
Yeah. I usually start these interviews off with a non-music question, which is, what would a perfect day off be for you without music?
Without music, I love resting when I can, man. I tell you, I've been watching this show White Lotus. I love that. And it's fine. One of my favorite actors right now is this guy Walton Goggins. He's in two of my favorite shows right now on HBO, that and The Righteous Gemstones, which I think is hilarious. And they're both coming out like right now, and new episodes and everything. So it's wild to see him in two totally different roles. I like going out and exploring a city and learning the culture of that city that I'm visiting. Because I often find myself in new places all the time because I'm traveling so much. And what you're talking about, a day off, basically is normally me in a hotel room somewhere and, going between gig to gig, wondering, what do I do today other than try to travel?
Yeah, it's fun, I guess, to get out of the hotel if you can and just explore around and meet people. And that's my favorite way to travel. I was always, we go to some place and just hang around and meet people and find restaurants and do things. I'm not a big organized tour kind of guy. I like to be on my own or with my wife and just fool around, have fun.
Yeah, I like to spend a lot of time. I recently got married myself, and
congratulations.
Whenever, thank you so much. Whenever I get some time to be with my wife, Waverly, it warms my heart, and we don't get to spend enough time together.
She musician?
Yes, she is also a musician, and that's how we met. We met in line at a Fillers convention. Bluegrass buddy of mine, Nate Leith, was, I think I was backing him up in the competition, or he was there hanging out in line at the Fiddlers Convention in Mount Airy, North Carolina. Yeah, and he said, y'all two need to be buddies, and he was my wingman, and it worked out pretty good, I reckon, there. So I was very thankful for him.
It's a nice story. I know you grew up in a musical family. I know your dad was a musician. Just talk a little bit about your growing up and how music became such a big part of life for you personally. Was it just something you were born into and just did?
Yeah, definitely. I was born into it, 100%. My dad's an award-winning songwriter. Grew up literally taking naps when I was a baby in his guitar case, and I mean, I just falling asleep to the sound of picking was a daily or nightly occurrence. And, um, I just was around it, was encouraged ever since I was young to get up on the stage and do my thing too. And my mom put me in guitar lessons and mandolin lessons when I was young with the McGee brothers. I took lessons from both of them, Rex and Ralph McGee, out of Stokes County, North Carolina, where I grew up. And then Dad would show me some stuff every once in a while too, and it all culminated into me writing my own music. And for a while, I kind of, and I've talked about this before, but I didn't really like bluegrass too much at the beginning, just because I thought it was kind of hillbilly or redneck or whatever when I was growing up, and all my buddies in school were listening to rap music and hip hop and popular music or emo kind of style rock and roll. Went through that whole whatever My Chemical Romance Green Day phase, and huh, yeah, but yeah, man, I love bluegrass now. It's been a full circle thing to come back to my cultural roots and to really fully have embraced it as an adult.
So when you were growing up as a kid, was bluegrass is what you heard mostly around the house? Was that like the soundtrack to your childhood, kind of?
I would say so. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Do you remember at any point in your life when you said to yourself, "Hey, I'm a professional musician"? Like you realized that this really was your career and that's what you were in for the long haul, or was it never a doubt that you would do that?
Yeah, I mean, when I was with Old Crow, I had a W-2 that they gave me at the end of the year and insurance through the band. So, that definitely kind of felt like, oh, I am a professional musician now. That
Pay
that
taxes and
was,
stuff.
yeah. When I was like, yeah, I mean, and not to talk too much about the money, but I was making good money with those guys, and I'm very thankful because they could have potentially paid me less, but um, they paid me really well, and so that was when I realized, okay, yeah, I'm actually making more money being a musician than I probably would, doing the thing I went to college for. So, and
Was
which was environmental studies.
Gotcha. Can you think of three, maybe two or three people that were real big influences on you musically, and talk a little bit about them? I know your father, I'm sure, was, but anybody else that you either in the bluegrass world or other music worlds that really like influenced you as a musician or a person, hero?
Y- yes, Larry Keel was definitely a huge influence on my guitar playing, and I mean, of course, Tony Rice. I think that you can't play bluegrass guitar without having it been inspired in some way by Tony Rice. And Larry Keel for me was kind of like, Billy Strings figure in my life. Before I knew about Billy Strings, I listened to Larry Keel, and the way that he played guitar, it was like he was playing an electric guitar. But maybe there's some kind of trying to impress dad aspect of liking some of these guitar players that used to play with him. Um, Larry Keel, Danny Nicely, and there's this cat out of Asheville, North Carolina called Aaron Woody Wood, who's those guys, they all did a very similar thing, which was that they played amazing flat picking solos, but they also incorporated electric guitar riffs into their acoustic guitar playing. And I always thought that sounded out of the box and in a great way, but still fit, they made it work within the genre. And I loved that.
Yeah. I always wondered if you took someone like Bill Monroe and gave him a Telecaster, what he would have done. I mean, you listen to his riffs and his songs, so much of it is really, I mean, it's like unamplified Led Zeppelin. I mean, it's so rocky, rock
Yeah,
and
man. I
rolly,
mean,
and
Chuck
it's
Berry, I think, definitely took some licks from Bill Monroe on the mandolin. They sound. You start listening to some of them Chuck Berry solos and some of that early rock and roll, and you hear that influence. I think, or there's some kind of crossover maybe it was unintentional, maybe it was intentional, who knows? But I've definitely heard some of the same licks being played.
Yeah, I mean the bluegrass scales and a lot of the Monroe songs are very, very bluesy,
Yeah, man.
and blues and rock are very so similar. So yeah,
Yeah, and I've always kind of connected those two with what you're talking about. I mean, bluegrass, I think of it kind of like, it does have elements of country and it has elements of jazz, but there's a lot of elements of rock and roll in there, like you're talking about. And I kind of think of myself as a rock and roller. And so I like to approach bluegrass from a rock and roll standpoint a lot of times. So that's a good hook line right there. The bluegrass rock and roller. Mason Vai.
So if you could have sat down and played music in history with somebody, who would that have been? Anybody in the history of rock or bluegrass could have been alive when you were and sat down on the living room couch and played some tunes. Anybody that comes to mind that you really would have enjoyed hanging with?
Man,
that's a tough one. I know
that's a really tough one. That's hard to say.
Did you ever get a chance to play with Tony Rice or hang with him at all?
No, and I've met Wyatt, and played with Wyatt, and when I did that, it was so much. I was so scared at first, but he was just the most down to earth dude. And the other thing is wild is that like he was so easy to play with. It was like I played better than I would have ever expected because he lays down this rhythm that you've heard your whole life on all these great recordings. He has some of the most rock solid rhythm guitar playing that there is or has ever been. So when I played with him, it was just like it's like playing, it's like butter or whatever. Such a great foundation.
Yeah. It's funny because I've interviewed a bunch of people on this podcast who Tony played up here 4 times. But I interviewed a lot of people that played with him over the years, and they all said to a man, they never played better than when they played with him, because when he walked in the room and unpacked his guitar, you just felt like a better musician right off the bat. It was
that's true.
Even like Jerry Douglas, he said when Tony walked in, everybody just upped their game without even playing a note. It was so interesting to hear that.
Yeah, but also, back to your other question, I think I was inspired a lot by Lonesome River Band growing up, and Ronnie Bowman and Dan Tominski, the way that they sing and play, is a huge influence on my pick. And I grew up listening to a lot of them and a lot of the Stanley Brothers. Those are kind of my deep dives I went into in college when I was trying to get into this music. And so, yeah, I think that and then Ronnie Bowman is actually singing a song on 2 songs actually on my new album. So that was a full circle moment for me to get one of my heroes on the project.
Yeah. This is a total change of subject, but when I was in high school, my nickname was Adi K, which my friends thought was short for Hare Krishna. I don't know why they named me Adi K, but I guess because I had long hair. And I saw an interview with you a while back where you talked about religion and your experiences with the Hare Krishna folks. Have you come to any new understanding about religion in your life? I think that was a few years ago. I saw this YouTube video you were talking about it. And I thought it was interesting because it wasn't what I expected to hear from a North Carolina kind of bluegrass guy. That you
of course
traveled that path and whatever.
Well, I grew up right next to it. Basically, there was a whole Hare Krishna. I want to say colony or whatever, but it's kind of like that. It's a small group of people within Stokes County, but some of the kids of the Hare Krishna stuff would go to the school, and it was the most kind of different thing that we ever experienced in Stokes County, probably because everybody there is just kind of small town Baptist raising, and everybody, there's a church on every corner around every curve. Basically, there's more churches than other places to drink or whatever. That's for sure. I'll say that there's barely a bar around there, and there's a whole bunch of churches. Yeah, Bible Belt of America. That's where I grew up. So, yeah, it was a different experience for me. I loved going to church kind of when I was a kid, but it definitely felt stiff and it felt like you got to dress up a certain way, this, that, and the other thing. Going to the Hare Krishna temple was kind of a breath of fresh air about the way I viewed spirituality, religion, any and all of that. Just because you go there, everybody's sitting on the floor, level headed. There's not somebody up on a stage. And we're all reading together in a circle out of the Bhagavad Gita. And then you're singing and dancing. Um, and this guy, Mitra, who was kind of the head of this Krishna Road temple back in Sandy Ridge, North Carolina, he was encouraging of, oh, bring your guitar out and your mandolin, which was, I guess, not traditional in the other temple that they had down the road in Prabhupada Village. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, man. You know, everybody would get ecstatic with joy over like having some kind of spiritual experience, I guess. And then they always had amazing, healthy vegetarian food, and it was a great community to be in, and it was wild that I ended up there, but was hanging out with these guys, Gopal, Vish, some other folks, Govinda, other picking buddies I would be jamming with, and we'd be like playing cards and camping out when we were growing up. And it started where I like stayed over at their house for like a sleepover, and then we went on Sunday to the temple, and I was just kind of seeing what it was like. You know, I was like, oh, it's a new experience. And then I started going kind of on my own because I made friends with folks there and got really into that for a while. But at some point, there was a cognitive dissonance for me because, and I don't let me talk too long because I have a tendency of doing that. But
this is interesting. This is interesting. I like this.
Okay, so I had a cognitive dissonance because, I mean, they're all celibate basically, and they don't like smoking weed and drinking beer, and I think I was eating fish at the time a little bit, or they had very specific things like can't eat eggs, and I didn't like all that because I like to rock and roll and party a little bit. So, and I don't know if that's hurting anybody specifically, but there's times I think back on it, and especially through this journey of being a musician, you know, there's a lot of you're basically playing in a bar almost every night of the year, and there's a lot of temptation that swirls around. So it's having something like Jesus or Krishna or whatever it is. It's kind of nice to turn to. I mean, I don't know. I'm basically, the core belief that I have is that I believe in God, and I believe, you know, in some kind of spiritual power around us. That there's some questions that don't have answers, but I also believe in science, and you know, I'm a firm believer in evolution and all that. So, I mean, anyway, I'm not trying to get too talking about this too much, but basically, yeah, I'm a spiritual dude, but I don't go to church every Sunday. I'll just tell you right now.
Okay. No, I asked you the question because I wanted to hear your view on it. So that's thank you for that. So vegetarian. My daughter's vegan. My wife and I are, I guess you'd call, pescatarians. Um, your vegetarian or pescatarian beliefs, is that because of health, or is it because you don't feel like killing animals? Or I'm just curious of people who don't eat animals, why they don't. For me, it's like, yeah, I see a cow. A cow's got emotions, feelings, and I think thoughts, and I just don't feel like it's my right to take its life away and then eat it. That's just me, but everyone has different views on all that stuff.
Yeah, and I felt that way growing up too, and I didn't, you know, I think I saw there was some friends of mine who got super into the PETA has all these different pictures of how they're killing the animals and all this stuff and yada yada. I had a girlfriend at the time who was a vegetarian, and that added into it a lot, of course. But I eat meat now, so I'm not a vegetarian anymore. When I moved to Nashville, I think that fried chicken was calling my name. That hot chicken was, when I first took a bite of that, dude, it was like, oh, it is on, dude. This is, I mean, I was holding off for so. You start to realize too when you're out on tour and everything, which Ketch was always very accommodating with the vegetarian stuff, because he himself is or a pescatarian, I think. And when I was in the Old Crows, but there were a lot of times, I mean, and still to this day, it's kind of that way, where you look at the menu and you got, all right, I can eat the veggie burger or a French fry or something, and then the whole menu is opened up. And I mean, morally, I learned in college that even when you're, harvesting the field for, vegetables or whatever you're planting, there are animals that are killed in the process, and that the whole thing is not as black and white as we make it out to be, and that there were actually some health things I was dealing with at one point, where I felt like I had too much soy in my diet, and I started eating meat again and started feeling a lot better. But now I've kind of been eating a lot of red meat, so I've been trying to, on the health kick, go pescatarian for a little bit again. And that's healthy. And I'm glad that I spent all those years being a vegetarian, because now I can eat some of them, whatever Beyond Meats, or just eat vegetarian, eat pescatarian, and be okay with that. Where there's a lot of people that would never touch it just because they think it's disgusting or whatever.
It's interesting these days, food choices. The spicy chicken is all the rage up here. There must be 5 spicy chicken places in New Haven alone, just sort of trying to copy the Nashville hot chicken thing. I don't know. I don't eat it, so I don't know, but there's a lot of them around here. Very popular. So let's go back. Let's go back to your music career a little bit, because we could talk forever about food and religion. And so you got, at some point, you had been playing with bands and this and that through your life, and then you got a call from Old Crow Medicine Show, or did they approach you about joining, or were you a fan of the band, or how did that all happen?
Yeah, I got a text from Ketch on Instagram, and he had reached out because their manager at the time had referred me, and she was talking to somebody. My buddy Ashby Frank had, which we weren't really that close, but I guess he had mentioned my name and said, "Oh, Mason's young," and he was just on American Idol, and so it all kind of pieced itself together there in a great way. And I went to audition, and it's wild, because Ketch and I had a very similar kind of trajectory when he was about my age when I joined the band, where he had went to Mount Airy Fillers Convention and hung out with a lot of the same old time musical heroes of ours, like Bill and Nancy Slies and Joe Thrift and the whole Dawn of the Buffalo crew, as well as like he was hugely influenced by the Red Hots, or a couple of these other bands. I'm trying to think, the Horseflies. Yeah, and so we shared that connection of this old time music that we had both experienced and hang around because he spent some time down in Greensboro too, and I think we knew a lot of the same people. And so when we jammed, long story short, it meshed really well, because it was like, oh, where I'm coming from, and I know where you're coming from, and we're both going for this thing, and it actually it was a great blend. And we had a lot of fun jamming that day too. We just played a lot of old time tunes and didn't specifically go over a lot of the Old Crow material until the next day. And we became fast friends, and it just it started happening.
It worked out really nicely for you, for your career, right?
Yeah. Now I'm on the other side of it, and I don't want to talk about Old Crow all day long, just because I'm not in the band anymore, and that's kind of the past. But
yep.
Love those guys, and they're still out there touring that album that I co-wrote 7 songs on and sang lead on 2 of them. So it's a great album, Jubilee. We got nominated for a Grammy for that. And yeah, I had been working on a lot of these songs that are on this new album of mine, self-titled Mason Vibe, when I was on that journey with them. And now I'm recorded them, and it's about to come out pretty soon here, April 25th. I think the whole thing comes out, and I feel really good about it.
I just remember being at Bluegrass jams maybe 15 years ago, and the jam, somebody would want to sing Wagon Wheel at the jam, and everybody would go, no, no, we're not doing that one. It's been so overplayed and so overheard. It was such a huge, I mean, one of the biggest recorded songs of all time. But I guess now, well, Rhonda Vincent recently did it, so maybe now it's cool to sing it again in a bluegrass jam. I don't know. I always loved the song, but I remember people saying, "Oh, we'll never play that song at a jam because it's just too popular or something." I don't know what the reason was. Anyway,
Man, I loved Wagon Wheel though. That was, and
yeah,
like I said, not to talk about it too much, but that was the kind of palate cleanser is what I called it, because we could be having and it just showed me what it's like to have a hit song, to playing a band that had a hit song, because we could be really sucking, or maybe we played a great show, but the whole crowd just didn't care. That happened a couple times too. And it was just like, why are they not getting into it? And so either of those scenarios happens, and then you're like, all right, here comes Wagon Wheel. At least I know they're going to like this. And sure enough, every time the whole crowd gets up on their feet, sings along to every word by the second chord you're playing. And so that was definitely an inspiration for me to write a song that had a big hook or a big chorus. And some of these songs on this album were inspired by that, trying to write this big catchy hook that hopefully everybody's going to be able to sing along to when they hear it.
yeah. The only band I can think of in rock is the band Queen, which has about 5 songs, which are like stadium sing along pleasers, that everybody knows the words to. And Wagon Wheel is certainly one of those, and it's uplifting, I guess, to have everybody on your side when you're on stage and they're all loving it. It must be an amazing feeling.
It is. Yeah. Feels like church almost at times when everybody's singing along, and all the worries of the world kind of fall away. And it's great.
I was watching your video for the song. There goes another one, which is a hilarious video. Being chased by the cop. You're driving like an old Nova Super Sport.
Yeah, man.
That is funny because growing up, I'm a lot older than you. My first car was a '58 Chevy pickup, and as a teenager, the Chevy Nova Super Sport was like the car everyone wanted to have because it was just a hot car. When I saw that video, it brought me back to my youth, and I just cracked up over the whole thing. The cop trying to get you and hiding. It was just it's a very funny video.
Thanks, man.
I loved it. Loved it. Can we talk about your songwriting? Because I know you've written a lot of songs over time that you have covered and other people have covered. I would say you're a very successful songwriter at a young age, one of the most. Do you have a certain method or strategy or schedule for writing songs, or you just write when something comes to you? How does that work for you?
Yeah, it's all different depending on the situation. I mean, I've kind of been in a writer's block recently where when I was in Nashville, what I loved and how I, in some ways, felt like I was prolific in writing, because I felt like I was writing a lot. But then you go to Music Row and hang out with some of those folks writing at a publishing company, and you start to realize, oh, these guys are writing 3 songs a day every day. Basically, yeah, it is kind of like a skill in a way, and the more you do it, the better you get at it. I think it's good to take a break and not just crank things out to crank them out too. I think that can be detrimental, and you could be wasting your time and just writing terrible songs. But yeah, what I was trying to say is when I moved to Nashville for the first time, I started co-writing with people, and that gave me a schedule where I would go and set a time with someone, and we kind of leave that right with something that we both feel good about. You have one other person when you're writing, to already kind of be an edit or, an advisor on it. And if they also think it's good, and 2 people think it's good, or how many people are writing, 3 people maybe sometimes, and then you bring it out in the world and you think, all right, at least we like it. Somebody else already likes it other than me, so it can't be that bad.
Right. I was talking about songwriting with John Weisberger, who came on the podcast, and he was saying Yeah, he always co-writes, but somebody else would come up with he wasn't the idea guy. He was the edit guy. Like people have these ideas and he would fine tune them and make them better. He said, that was always my role. I didn't come up with this great idea. I found a line about this girl. He would say, you play me what you got, and then I'll tell you what's wrong with it and how to make it better. So I guess
Yeah.
maybe it takes different personalities to kind of chime in different parts of the song, maybe a hook or a melody or whatever that kind of make it all work as a co-write.
Yeah, that's kind of how it was for that song Down Home Dispensary, which was that Molly Tuttle cut, that was gonna be a Old Crow song actually originally, but then I think had enough songs on the album, and they were like, let's maybe they were talking about waiting to do that as a single around 420, and but then Molly wanted to cut it, so they ended up doing it instead. But Molly and Ketch basically wrote most of that. And then Ketch brought it to me because he was like, what can we do with this? We don't really have any chords to it. They just kind of had written a lot of lyrics while they were driving down the highway and beating on the dashboard of the car, kind of singing monotone. Like they were thinking it was I don't know what the plan was with it really exactly, but I had thought in my head, I'm like, oh, this sounds kind of like you ought to make it, thinking for Old Crow. I was like, we ought to make this like one of them Prohibition era kind of like, come on out, like a Capitol, whatever March kind of style song, like pitching an idea, like, well, or like a Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy, or I don't know, kind of just one of those style ragtimey numbers, and it worked out well, and it was a lot of fun. And so that was kind of my contribution to the song to turn it into that, and the kind of the lick, what, and I think I added maybe one or two words to it to change it to fit that kind of schematic of it. But yeah, and there's other times where I've written and I was mostly the lyric guy too. So it depends on the situation, of course,
So when you sit down to write a song, so you just have an idea, either a riff or a chord change or something in your head, or do you try to come up with something from your life that maybe might make an interesting song, or is it just varies depending on the mood and all these other factors?
Yeah, I mean, I often put off the songs that I really want to write about just because it's a lot easier to write a love song or write about something that's a little bit more level ground for the average person instead of just kind of writing about something very specific that maybe would alienate some of the audience. But at the same time, some of those are my favorite songs. So I want to write more of those that are a little bit more specific and a little bit more like from experiences that I've had or experiences that other people had, story songs, etc. But like I was saying earlier, I oftentimes revert back to the love song schematic just because people can relate to that. At the end of the day, we've all experienced love or heartbreak in some form or another, and we can connect on that as a people, and it gives you feelings.
Yeah, no, I mean, right. Love and tragedy are the two main, I guess, inspirations for almost every great song. Certainly in the bluegrass and country. Well, I don't know about contemporary country. I'm not going to go there, but real country is usually about love or tragedy or both, it seems like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I find it's interesting you mentioned story songs. It's very hard to have a story song which doesn't just become a kind of boring. I mean, there's some great story songs that tell a story from A to B or A to D, but it's hard to write I think a story song which is not just a boring story, because you can imply the storyline without saying, I went down to the river, I shot her, I threw her in, she floated down, blah blah blah. That's a story song, okay, but to try to write something like that seems like might get a little tedious because so many of those have already been written. Trying to bring a new angle to a story song, I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know how to do it. I just find that some story songs get a little too storyish, if you know what I mean.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the constant battle of trying to write something compelling that is interesting, and yet keep the people's attention with a great chorus, or bring everybody together in a way that makes it catchy enough where you're not getting lost in it. I mean, I don't listen to, trying to think of an example. Matty Groves is a great traditional ballad song, but it's 7 minutes long or something like that. And so you don't listen to that every day because of that. It's like, oh, what a great story, but you can't. So there's real reasons too behind why some songs are whatever 3 minutes long. It's because it's easier for us to consume. I mean, we've become in this society where, and I hate to say it, but it's just everything's so much clickbait. We don't have the attention span as we used to. And you got to understand that that's definitely a factor when, and that I've been affected by that as well as everybody else when we listen to music.
Yeah. I mean, everything's speeded up and everybody knows everything, and it's hard to find anything new, and attention spans are 30 to 45 seconds.
Yeah. My buddy,
move on.
Lucas White, he gives me this credit. He says, Mason, you're like Martin Scorsese of a song, because you can tell his story in 3 minutes, like a whole movie. And that's one of my favorite compliments I've ever gotten. And that's what, after he said it, it's like, that's what I want to do. I want to be able to give you a whole movie's worth in 3 minutes,
Yeah. I mean, to me, one of the better or best songwriters in that category would be someone like Tim O'Brien, who, has written some great songs, which definitely tell a story. There's a lot of mood and emotion and whatever in there, but it's just 2 or 3 verses and 2 choruses and it's done. Less than 3 minutes. I love it. And to me, that's like the ultimate song. Tell a story in a short time.
Yeah, I am hugely inspired by Tim O'Brien and his kind of style and approach. I think of other folks who are like this guy Robbie Fulks, or Daryl Scott, or some people like that who are like, yeah, they're definitely bluegrass, but at the same time, there's this whole other element to them that's like an amazing songwriter. They just like music. And Tim, I mean, some of his solo albums are like, I just love how he bridges country and tradition so well.
Yeah, he's definitely one of my heroes in music. What do you think it is about I've been thinking about this lately. What is it about bluegrass that makes it so appealing, both to you and to the public? Because it's kind of a music which is harkening back to a simpler time, songs about love and murder and whatever. In this day and age, what is it about bluegrass that's so appealing? Say it to you.
Well, man, I think there's like sometimes this feeling that we're all so disconnected because we're, on these phones all day or whatever it is. And we kind of want that feeling of the tribe or whatever, you want to feel like you're part of getting back to the roots of it all, which is hanging around the campfire with your buddies and making acoustic music and that's there's a feeling of wanting to get away from all the technology maybe. But there's also, to me, in all honesty, I think I got into bluegrass just because of ease of access. You don't have to bring a whole drum kit or bring your amp and plug in and mess around with all these pedals and set up all this stuff. And it's not as loud as an electric guitar when you play the acoustic guitar. So, plus, when you grow up in North Carolina in the foothills of Virginia, man, it's just banjos. You throw a rock, you hit a banjo player, man. So it's a product of my raising more than anything. So it's not that I specifically chose to do this. It's just that it was. I mean, I couldn't fight it. It's around me, it's who I am, playing this music, and then I bring in whatever influences that I take in from the world around me, and I put it into this acoustic bluegrass music.
Yeah. Do you feel like younger people? I've been putting on concerts for it's going 18 years, and my audience is mostly over the age of 60. And I've always tried to get younger people in. I've had a lot of young bands, but um, it seems like up here, young people are not really, they just want the quick, easy entertainment on their phone. They want to be able to drink and listen to music for 30 seconds and then have another drink. And, it's, what about down where you are? Are younger people interested in like actually sitting and listening to bluegrass for an hour and a half, or is it a challenge for them down there too, like it is here?
Well, man, if you can't keep their attention, you ain't doing your job right. I think that's the way I think about it. That's what I learned from Old Crow, is that you got to treat everything like it's a street corner, and depend, no matter what the stage is. But there's different times for different settings. There's definitely times where I thought, like, I got a couple funny songs or whatever, and like you think, and you go play some rowdy bar or you play some wild party, and then they love them, but then you go to the quiet listening room and you play that, and it kind of is like a little out of place. So it's figuring out where to do the certain songs at certain places, and reading the room a little bit about the situation, because I can do the ballad thing, or I can do the hoedown, or the funny song, the party pleaser. So trying to figure out, riding that line, that's the dance that a great performer always knows, I guess. And so that I'm still figuring that out a little bit myself, figuring out the set list. When you're in a band like Old Crow, or a band that's that big, you have the power of the hit song, is what I was talking about earlier. And when you have a song that so many people know, they're going to be able to sing along to it. Their attention is going to be there because they already know it. They listen to it on the ride there. And if you don't have that, if you just are coming out and playing these songs and nobody knows them, it is kind of like, I got to keep their attention. And so I think of ways to get the crowd involved, so that they aren't starting to fall asleep or anything. Like, I'm like, all right, let's get up and have a dance contest, or let's everybody clap your hands, or let's sing along on this and I'll teach you the words. And, or I might tell a story beforehand that harkens back to a place that they might connect to.
Were you ever a shy guy? You seem like you're very comfortable in front of people and entertaining, and you kind of sure of yourself. Were you ever shy, or you always been like just an out front kind of guy?
Oh man, it's funny you say that, because I think of myself as a complete introvert inside, but I just put on all this, because it's kind of expected of me or whatever.
Yeah.
I really am quite shy in a lot of ways. I can't tell you how many times, you get into some of these, and then because there isn't always the social, you don't get taught that in school or whatever. Some of the social not the social norms, but like just how to navigate certain social situations or whatever. I've definitely run into some famous people or whatever in my head, or people who I looked up my whole life, and then you meet them, and there's been occasions where it was like nothing, and then there were some other times where I was like scared to say anything, because I was like, oh my gosh, you're my hero, So I've run into it all.
I've noticed, I don't know if this is true everywhere, but up here, there are a lot of great young string bands, great players. A lot of them went to Berkeley, they can play the hell out of any instrument, but they don't have that, like between songs, they don't tell a joke. They just turn their back in the crowd and talk to each other. They don't have the entertainment quality, which I think is pretty important in any art, public art. But you're there. People are paying to be entertained and have a good time. Yeah, they like to hear a fantastic jazz bass mandolin solo in the key of, F sharp, but they want to have fun. And I feel like that's lacking in a lot of young bands up here. They just don't have that connection, like you're saying, about with the audience. Sometimes the banter between songs, the joking around, the kind of making a fool of yourself, whatever. I don't know if it might not be as true where you are, because you probably have more kind of real bluegrassy bands down there than we have up here. But a lot of the younger bands, I feel like that's the one thing they lack, is that entertainment quotient.
Yeah, man. I mean, at the end of the day, we're playing this bluegrass music, but you got to think that there was, where this all started from, which there, in Bill Monroe's band, they're used to, they did whatever they could to get the crowd going. They played baseball with the folks beforehand, had a baseball team, and then trying to think, Stanley Brothers, and then Flatt and Scruggs, there'd definitely be some guy who'd come up to the mic and start telling some joke. Sometimes they weren't always that funny, honestly, but they'd at least try. They'd tell some joke, I think back on, the Martha White show. Who was it? I think that, the bass player would come up and tell some joke, I think. But anyway, that's always been a part of it. And I learned that a lot from Catch when I was in the band, that you gotta keep them in the palm of your hand or whatever it is. And you're totally right, dude, because people are going out to hear you. They're spending their weekend, their one time. I guess, let me put this into perspective. You and me, we listen to music probably all the time. You're running a bluegrass podcast. You must listen to a lot of music. You probably go out and see live music a lot. But there's definitely a lot of folks out there in America who they might not go see a concert ever. They might have one night a year that they go out. And you gotta give it everything you got when you come and play to those folks, because they might not get another night to go here, or just, I don't know.
Yeah. It's a good point. Yeah. You don't know how important that night is to them, but you better make it important, I guess, is what you're saying.
Yeah. There was a lady who, she was an older woman who came up to a show the other day, and she said, "I've never been to a concert before. This is my first concert I've ever been to." And I just was like taken back on that, because I think I'm like, my whole life revolves around, I'm either at a concert, I'm playing a show, I'm picking with some buddies. This person has never been to a concert in their life. And, she was over 60 years old. So it's like, makes you think, wow, just wow.
Wow. Yeah. What can you say? That's amazing. Is music ever political for you in terms of like either a song or, I don't know. You were saying before the time we're living in now is very disjointed, divided. There's a lot of anger and blah, blah, blah going around different sides of the political thing. I always feel like art is political by nature, but do you think music is political for you, or should be, or would be, or you trying to keep it on a separate level, just kind of entertaining and musical?
Man, I battle with that question a lot, because I have strong personal beliefs, but then when I get out, you can easily, like I was saying, you could easily start dividing people when you start talking about stuff too much. So I think of trying to bring people together when I come to play a show. And I hopefully, within my songs that I sing about, I would not sing about something that I didn't personally believe in. There's definitely some times where I've written and played some songs where I just thought, I don't know if this crowd is, I guess this is a less of a divisive topic, but for example, that song that I was talking about earlier, the Down Home Dispensary, wanting to play that at his show, and it's a song about legalizing weed. And there's some people out there in the crowd that might not want that to happen. But then even if you didn't, it's kind of like a funny talk. It's enough of it's not too heavy or whatever to scare someone off at the same time. You kind of present it in like a way like, oh, let's all come together, have some fun, And
that reminds me of the famous song Merle Haggard, "Okie from Muskogee," which was basically a song, criticizing young people for smoking pot, but it was tongue in cheek. because he did, and well, half the audience probably did smoke pot too. So it was kind of a political statement, but it was also funny, and you could read it any way you wanted to.
Yeah, yeah. Or I think of a great songwriter who I aspire to be kind of like is, and I've talked about this before, John Prine.
Oh yeah.
Everybody loves John Prine, and the way that he writes a protest song is he writes it in a way that there are people singing along to it who might not even, like I think of Paradise as a great example of like, this is a song specifically talking about how the coal company has destroyed, this town and is polluting and etc. Destroyed the environment. But like people, no matter what side of the fence you're on, they're all singing along to it, and they're, you know what I mean? Like it's presented in a way where it's like you and me are sitting having a Coca-Cola or something on the front porch of the general store and just kind of shooting the breeze and we are and connecting on some of these things in life without having all this political division that the parties put upon us.
Right. Yeah.
We're all basically what I'm trying to say is we're all a lot more alike than we realize we are.
Yes,
And
I agree.
but some of these this, the politics and stuff divides people.
I think of John Prine's song about how your flag decal won't get you into heaven anymore. I mean, that's a pretty cynical song about religion and stuff, but you're right. People of every background love to sing along to it. Jesus don't like killing no matter what the reasons for. Okay, that's a political statement about war and religion. But yet,
Yeah. But when John Prine sings it, he sounds like your funky cousin or whatever. You're just like, that's, And then I think a lot of people connect with some of that stuff too,
Yeah.
regardless of what side you're. Like I said, I think the world's a lot more divided by the media and all that stuff than we all need to be, and we all need to come together, a little bit more, meet in the middle.
I agree with you. So where do you see yourself in 5 years? Do you have interest in pursuing kind of the countryside of music, or do you like where you are now with the more bluegrassy kind of songs that you write, or do you have a vision for the future, or are you just living your life kind of in the moment?
Oh man, it's I had a psychedelic rock project that I was doing in Nashville with my buddy Charlie Chamberlain, who I co-wrote the songs "Fallen" and "Melt in the Sun" with, as well as a country song on there. But those two that I just mentioned are definitely kind of in that vein. And you start to realize this album specifically is kind of funny how you change the instrumentation or the production on a song and it can sound totally different. You can have the exact same song. And how the production, if it's a good song, it'll be good in whatever genre, most likely. But it is wild to hear how drastically something can change sound when you produce it differently. You put a bluegrass band behind it instead of a full-on rock and roll electronic thing or something. But yeah, I mean, I want to go country. There's also times where I think about, I'm playing a lot of these shows just me and the guitar right now, and that puts me in this space of like, I feel like I should be a folk singer, because you strip all that other production away, and that's what you are basically.
Right.
You're a folk singer if you're just a guy playing a guitar. And then why wouldn't I try to be Woody Guthrie or Pete Seeger or something? I don't know. That's definitely kind of the direction I've thought about going with the next album, of just playing some stuff, me and the guitar, and going a little more folky. But I've thought about going country too. I mean, that's fun. I look at this guy, Zach Top. I love, he used to play bluegrass, and now I love his country album. I mean, people are just eating it up. It's a real deal country, and people miss that when it's, they miss real country music, I guess, so to speak. And I'm not saying that some music isn't, but there's definitely some stuff on Music Row or whatever, like, I don't know, like Florida Georgia Line, Luke Bryan, that kind of thing, that it's getting away a little bit from what we think of as when we hear the word country. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying
I'm
that music's bad or whatever, but it is different than what we think of as country.
So funny because there's a kid up here, a college student who has a country radio show every week, and he plays mostly 90s country. He plays, Alan Jackson and Garth Brooks and Clint Black, all this stuff. And he played this song the other day, and I said, "Who is that?" He goes, "Oh, it's this young kid named Zach Top who's opening for Alan Jackson." And I said, "Oh my God, what a great singer!" And I looked him up so I had never heard of him until last Tuesday, and I was on the show. So yeah, is a great young talent. But as you are, I mean, you have the kind of voice and personality that could pull off that kind of stuff too. So, but yeah, it's fun to see what people do with kind of real country. I agree with you. Music Row, Nashville country, to me, most of it is, I'm going to just say is crap, but that's just, I can say it. Maybe you can't say it, but I think a lot of it's just crap. I mean, it's just making money, cranking out song after song. They're all the same. They don't really say anything. They're just about chicken and Chevys and, blah, blah, blah. There's my two. Whatever. So I see you mentioned you're playing solo. So you're playing in Boston very soon, correct? Like maybe this week?
I am, yeah. At Club Passim.
Yeah.
Cambridge.
Shoot, I wish I could come up. Is it Friday night? Saturday night?
Oh, you gotta make me look here. Hold on a sec.
Well, I saw it on your schedule, and I said, "Oh wow, you're gonna in the neighborhood." But I think I'm gonna be
it's
in New York.
Wednesday.
Oh, it's a Wednesday. That wouldn't be tomorrow, would it be? No.
No, it's March 26th.
Oh, March 26th looks like a Wednesday. Oh shoot, maybe I'll come up there with my wife and check it out. We're only 2 hours away from Club Passim, so it'd be fun to hear you in that folk song setting.
Yeah, just me and the guitar.
Nice.
Yeah, where so many famous folks played before. So that has a lot of historic significance, that place. I'm excited to play there.
Yeah, it's just a great place. Well, is there anything else you want to talk about? We've talked for a good hour. I'm getting a lot of feedback here. We've talked for a good hour and covered a lot of stuff. We usually like to keep it to about an hour. Anything you want to add before we close out here, Mason?
Oh yeah. When is this going to come out? Do you know? I have an idea. Or?
It's probably going to be next. It might even come out tomorrow. I can send you the episode link later today, but it might come out tomorrow or it might be next Tuesday. I don't know. I try to keep each episode kind of featured on my thing for a week. I just talked to Ron Stewart last, so he's on there now, and then I try to have one stay on there featured for a week or so and then move on. So, and I keep all the rest obviously on the website, but it'll be soon.
Yeah. So I got a new song that's coming out on Friday, March 20th. So if this is coming out on Tuesday, then it'll already be out, but called Melt in the Sun. And we got a claymation music video that's going to come out too. So I'm stoked about that. That was wild.
Oh, wow.
And it's a kind of a long song too. So that you really, as a whole very cinematic kind of music video, because it's like a 5-minute song. So you really get into this world of this claymation space cowboy dude as he traverses through the universe and throughout time to find his lost love and try to bring her back. Cool.
It sounds pretty cool and ambitious. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. Well, maybe it'll go on. Maybe this will be on tomorrow. So I got to get you out there to the public, because people up here don't really know much about you, but they will. But
well, thank you for featuring me. Hopefully they will.
Yeah, they will. Anyway, well, I want to thank you, Mason. It was a fascinating conversation. We went off into different areas, but that's what I like about these chats. I don't really care about talking about what kind of pick you use or what kind of strings you use. That doesn't really interest me. So this is just what I like. People talking about their lives.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, thanks again for being on, and I will turn this off now, and then we can talk a little after if you want.
Okay. Well, actually, I got to get going, but I appreciate you, Chris. Yeah, I got to I'm teaching some lessons over in Melrose, which is about 30 minutes away, and I got to be there at 2:30, and it's 2:00 right now. So
see ya.
Running
See you
the
later.
Beats Band, but thank you so much for having me, Chris. I really appreciate you.
I'll meet you in person soon, I'm sure. Thanks, Mason.
All right, have a good one.
Yeah, bye.
I hope you enjoyed our podcast, and thanks for listening. Visit our website, guitartownct.com, for concert and podcast schedules, or just to send us a message. We'd love to hear from you.